Okay, this is meant to help mainly parents or older siblings with editing because I know it can seem really daunting, especially with multiple kids or students who have a lot that they're working on in writing to get editing done. So I wanted to point out some strategies because teachers were used to trying to edit with, say, 25 kids in the room and getting through as much as we can, helping kids out a lot, but you don't have time to fix every single mistake. And don't worry if you don't either. So I wrote up just an example paper with plenty of purposeful mistakes. I went on a walk. We saw butterflies. It was fun. So we have a few things here. There's the actual editing of like spelling errors and capitalization and other errors. And then there's also the fact that it doesn't have much detail. I'm going to start with how to approach the other errors. First of all, trust me, your students know that they are supposed to start sentences with capitals. They know the capitalization rules. If you notice that something doesn't follow a lot of the rules, one thing that's totally okay to do is say, hey, just as a question, what do sentences always start with? They'll say a capital letter. Do we just use capital letters randomly in the middle of a sentence or at the end of a word? No. And then say, hey, would you go back and fix this and then come back to me? Totally reasonable to do. Because a lot of them might go back and they were just in a hurry and they'll be like, okay, so that actually is a capital. Well, oh, okay, this should be a W. Like they'll be able to make some changes and that saves you some time. They might not get all of it, but they might know some things to do. I'm doing this in pen so you can see it, but they'd be probably in pencil. So maybe they miss, like this is a capital S in saw, but they made a few changes because that just lowers your workload right away and it pushes them to notice their own mistakes. Next would be going through and you might say, hey, as you're going through, this really looks like a capital S based on the size of the other letters. Remember, it should be lowercase because this isn't the name of something. It's not the beginning of a sentence. It's just a regular word. Okay, that kind of reminds them of the rule. Then it's time to go through and maybe talk about some spelling. So we have went. This is something too where if you have time, you could always say, hey, listen to the word went. Woo and what makes the eh sound? A lot of them will be able to say, oh, that actually should be an E. That helps support them next time they're sounding a word to make sense of that. Walk is tough because we don't really pronounce the ul very well, so you might have to either stretch it out walk and kind of show that to them, or just point out, oh hey, there's actually an L in walk, like in talk or chalk, and then help them make that connection. Butterflies, it's okay with those big long words. You might just say, hey, let me help you spell butterflies. Butterflies. If you don't have time or want to explain all the spelling rules involved in that, that's okay. They actually know a bunch of them, like that we double up letters, how to make something that ends with Y, plural, but you don't necessarily have time. Something to keep in mind too, if there are still some spelling errors, that's okay. Something I might focus on if a student really is struggling with spelling is a few key words. Maybe give them some of the really tough words, like if they're writing about rocket ships, show them how to spell rocket. If they have a lot of spelling errors, focus on maybe a word that comes up a lot. And you don't have to correct it every time. You can say, hey, here's how to spell walk. If they use walk later, they're in charge of going through. They know how to spell it now, and they need to make that change. And you might see some things where you're like, that's kind of a complicated word. They also use the word please, because, and a bunch of things. And just focus on a few so that it's readable. Because if you're trying to correct every single thing, not only does that take a long time, but it can be really frustrating for students when they're like, wow, I have to change almost every single word in my writing. Next, one thing I would point out would be this really should be sentences. I went on a walk. We saw butterflies. It was fun. So you can say, when I'm reading this, notice where I pause. I went on a walk. Oh, that's probably a good place for a period. That means I need to capitalize this now. We saw butterflies. It was fun. Either that could be two short sentences, or could you say, we saw butterflies and it was fun? Oh, sure. And they can write in the word and. Okay. Next, adding more detail. Several people have mentioned, it's it's really hard to get my second grader to write very much. That is super common. Trust me, your teachers have the exact same experience. So one thing I think about with kids is that they really, really, really like to talk. And one thing that's difficult when you reach your frustration point is you have so many ideas in your head. And right now, their skills in writing, they write more slowly than often they think. And so helping them see, though, that things that are in their head that aren't written down, their reader doesn't know. So I might say, okay, cool. So you went on a walk, you saw butterflies. What did the butterflies look like? And they'll be like, oh my gosh, they were orange and black, and they had they had like wings, and there was like a little bit of white on the tips. It was so cool. Oh wow, what was fun about it? Was it fun to see the butterflies, or did you do something? Oh, well, we played soccer while we were at the park. Oh, okay. And then you kind of slip in there. So I actually didn't know any of that from reading your writing because you didn't tell me what the butterflies looked like, and I didn't even know you played soccer. Could you add those details? One way to fish for it. Another thing can be to straight up say, we saw butterflies. Can you think of a couple words to describe the butterflies? And they might go, well, they were orange and black. Okay, what if you say we saw orange and black butterflies? It was fun. What was fun? Tell me more. It was fun to play soccer. And sometimes it even helps with reluctant writers to say, hey, it was fun to play soccer. To play soccer. That's only 3 words. If you could add those 3 words, it would really tell a lot more in your story. So those are some ideas. You might have a writer who loves writing and just fills it with details, but I understand, especially right now, some kids are pretty good at trying to figure out how they can get away with the least amount of work. Another thing to keep in mind too, very genuinely, everyone's brains are a little stressed right now, even if the kids aren't necessarily aware of it and trying to keep as much stress off them. There's just so much change that it's natural for maybe some of their abilities to be a little lower than they have been. And maybe also to have some mistakes because they actually really enjoy that one-on-one editing time with you. So don't stress too much. Find what you can to fix. If it feels like editing is taking a really long time, again, just give them some tips, help out a little bit, ask them some questions about what they wrote. Remember that you can ask them to do a lot of the editing. They know what to do. They just need to kind of get that push. And good luck. I know it's a challenge.